I was down at
Check the little goats, man. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know. Well, I'm glad the weather cleared up. I completely ran out. Like at the house.
Okay, we are now
I
live.
haven't heard that since 2015 in Lake County.
Well, because I have it in my, under the porch, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You just
You
didn't
gotta,
want
like-
to go all the way out there because it's
It's
worth to
under
bring it back.
snow. Like,
Oh, it was outside. You
It's
ran
under
out
the
inside,
tarp.
okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Sam. It looks like we're back.
From his wood pile to
We'll be moving on to our 7.3 item, public review and approval of the County of Lake Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention, HHAP, Round 4 application. And Todd Metcalf is back, and I think he should be ready for this one this time. Yep, he is, because I see Scott logging on. So I'll give you the floor, sir.
Hopefully we're all still awake. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Board. Todd Metcalf, Behavioral Services. So what is before you today, and I promised to really keep it brief. This, as some of you have been following, this is yet another round of homeless housing assistance prevention program funding that we are bringing forward to, hopefully will approve us to apply for these funds. And although the state hasn't specifically indicated a dollar amount yet, we're asking for approval to move this forward so that we can be poised to utilize these funds once they are released. And to back up a little bit, the funding for this round is based upon the point in time count, which to date, and Scott, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe the Housing and Urban Development Department has approved yet. So it's kind of an odd thing we're bringing forward, that there isn't a dollar amount associated with it yet. But we want to get this approved because once we're awarded this, that we would like to obviously go out to bid, and our hope is to put out an RFP to fund and operate a year-round homeless shelter. And with that, I have Scott Abbott, our Mental Health Services Act and Housing Program Manager here, who's been much more intimately involved in this than I have. And Scott, if it's all right with you, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll jump in if and when needed.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you. So what the point of this is, this is HHAP round 4 for the county. HHAP has existed in round 1, started around 2019, 2020, and then round 2, round 3. Round 3 we just did this past summer. We went through a very similar process as this. What the requirement and why we're coming before you specifically is, the requirement is that we have a public hearing to get input on the application that we've done. The application was included, is an Excel spreadsheet that was included along with the memo for this particular item. And so what it's, and as Todd mentioned, the funding hasn't been tied to this yet. The state has been really trying to push through getting this process going. And what they're waiting for, this HCD is waiting for, is to get the numbers from HUD from the point in time counts, so they can then determine what the allocations will be across the state. And so unlike last summer where they did have the numbers and they asked how we were spending specific dollars, this one is just asking what our percentage is of the funding that we're assuming will be coming will be. And for this particular application, as you can see on the budgeting tab, or I think is the funding plan. Should I share that, or does everyone have that?
If you could, if it's easy for you, Scott, that
I'll do that. I'm sharing the right thing. Okay, as you can see, I put up the budgeting tab, and so it says 93% of this will go into interim sheltering new and existing. We're assuming that this will be approximately the same amount that round 3 is, which was about $570,000. So we'll probably be close to this. They kind of figured out round 3 and round 4, the state did around the same time. So, from that, we're kind of expecting that from that, we'll probably dedicate it toward some type of interim sheltering situation. As you can see in the third column right there, 10% of that has to go toward some type of youth services, youth set aside for youth that are experiencing homelessness. All the HHAPs have that, although it used to be 8%, now it's 10%. And so that's generally what we're looking at. The other parts of this application had to do some of the goals that we are setting, some of the outcome goals, and so this is based on the previous PIT that we do know that we have, which we had 363 people that were deemed homeless, and we're looking at least 10% change that we can make. As you're probably aware, the governor for the round 3 applications was rather upset because the other applications didn't have a very high amount of change that they reported. He said the average was 2%, and so we already had 10%. So I think we met that. By the way, HHAP 3 has been released. The only thing that they did was asked us some clarifying questions of how we were going to achieve some of these goals that we had set. The goals in general, as you probably look through this, are ways that we can, particularly ways we can reach traditionally underserved populations, and so we address those of what we'd like to do. Otherwise, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So I'd like to respond to questions that you may have, and the public may have.
Supervisor Spatier?
Thank you for bringing this item and the presentation. I'm going to speak very frankly on this. I did not like the way Governor Newsom approached this situation. However, the message is heard. When I'm looking at this, there is some confusions. For example, on the outcome goal number 1B, it says baseline data, daily estimate of number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. It says 413. It's right below that, I think.
Got it.
Yeah, there it is, 413. When I go to the top, it says number of people who are unsheltered is 259. So are we using the PIC count or are we not using the PIC count? Because those numbers differ.
I'm sorry, I probably explained inaccurately. What those red numbers come from is baseline data that the state provided us that were based on PIT counts and also our HMIS numbers. And I'm sorry, HMIS, our homeless management information system, the software system which we use to gather, collect, and report data to the state as well. And so the red numbers are actually baseline data numbers that they provided.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification. The way that I had read it, I thought it was based on the PIC count, but obviously the numbers at the top of this application are based on that. I have two comments to make, and one of the things I would like us to do is take a little bit more time with this. I know we have 60 days, which means we have till about January 20-something to submit this, because it was due November 29th. But I also want to take the words from Governor Newsom with a heavy hand. we have to challenge ourselves to make a change. I mean, these are human beings out there. Right now, we just experienced snow below freezing, and there's not much available to help these people. And these individuals, not only are they human beings that are sitting there in the elements and possibly getting harmed by being out in the elements, but they're also, God, I don't want to say something that sounds horrible, but I'll just be blunt. They are also an issue for our businesses. They're an issue for our neighborhoods, because it's not appropriate to have people sleeping in places that aren't adequate for people to be. We made a great effort. Unfortunately, that effort had to end, and we are attempting to restart so that we can get a shelter, so I agree with that. But when I see here that the annual estimate of the unsheltered homeless is 413, and that we hope to change 10%, I'm going to say we can do better. I'm going to say we will do better, because we should do better. And if we don't meet that goal of, let's say, 25%, whatever it is, at least we're challenging ourselves to do a whole lot more, because those people deserve us to try that much harder and to try to make it happen. And I don't think it should be a strike against behavioral health or a strike against the COC if it can't happen, but why wouldn't we try? Why wouldn't we challenge ourselves? I walked away from that meeting with just one thing, and that's challenge accepted. And I know that this application, the way it was submitted to the public and to the board, it wasn't fixed until yesterday at approximately 3 p.m. I don't know how many other supervisors requested for a clearer version to be able to read it, because it was kind of split in half the way it was printed, and that happened. But I would love for the public to take time, the COC to take time, and us to take time to decide what is the challenge that we are accepting to do, because I don't feel 10% is enough. And I'll just end it there.
But I totally understand where you're coming from right there. Particularly with the numbers that we do have, and we assume there's probably even greater amounts. As a good portion comes from pit counts, which are just one day's snapshot of a count. And recognizing the 10% of that is rather low. We set 10% as a minimum of what we wanted to do, not as, we always are striving to do as best as we can, but we want to, set the floor at least at 10%. When we did have a shelter, I think we're doing much better. I think we'd all agree with that, and I think it's important, really significant, that we at least get back to where we were when we did have that shelter happening. And so that's, I think, a big reason we have such a, this is dedicated mostly to that effort of being able to do that. We do have some, as you're aware, some other funding which is coming, the HHIP, which will hopefully be able to expand upon, beyond just trying to find or establish interim shelter, but to do more prevention and more rapid rehousing and more outreach, to be able to do some of those other things with additional greater funds. This we're recognizing, as we've talked about in here before, the importance of establishing resources for an interim shelter to get one going again.
I could, but I want to make sure other people have.
I was just going to state something about the pit count. I do, what pit count are you referring to, Scott?
The one that the COC does every year in last week of January.
So this one's from last year?
Or 2022, right?
It'd be this year's. It just,
Right.
HUD has not, it hasn't been finalized or approved yet.
Right.
That's why we don't know how much money we're going to get.
I
Right.
see. So we're basing it off of a potential pit count that's coming up?
Correct. But no,
No, but
it's what we think we counted this year that we've already submitted.
Okay.
for January
Right,
2020.
it's like.
Yeah,
like-
it just
like-
hasn't been approved
I
yet.
It's like-
see, I see.
HUD has to certify it, I assume, or something along those lines, and then from there, to give that back to 8CD, who then is able to do the allocations for what this really will be.
I see where I made the mistake. I apologize. I thought we were talking about January 2023. That's why I said. But either
No,
way, I
But
really,
that's coming up.
yeah. But what I'm thinking too is that, I have respect for people that conduct the pit count. I think it's a great thing we have to do. I know we have to use those numbers to ensure that we count the amount of people, but I think there needs to be a deeper dive into specific communities. I think truthfully, the way I feel is that we go to a spot where, people are more attainable than others, and sometimes we have to get into specific neighborhoods, specific demographics and whatnot, and ensure that we get count of those, because leaving a lot, I guess, a lot of low-hanging fruit, they call it. Maybe it's not, because you also have to take that extra initiative or partner with people that can conduct that work and get the numbers you need. That will help with, I think, with the plight that you're asking for, which is doing better. And I agree, and I was in that meeting, heard the same thing loud and clear. So just wanted to highlight that.
I appreciate you saying that, Supervisor Crandall, because that is something that's we're really trying to work on. Every year, we always strive to make the pit count better, to be able to reach out and find more people that we know are being missed. And so we're, each year we're trying to do better and better at that. This year we're doing some additional outreach to try and do that. So there's that is one of our main goals, is to try to reach those that have not been reached before.
Supervisor Sabatier, or no, I'm sorry, Supervisor Green had his pen up, and then I'll go back to you, sorry.
Again, a new kid on the block, so if there are data gaps in pit counts from year to year, that's obviously going to affect these little matrices here. So certainly appreciate the comment about we need to do more and we need to be responsive to the governor's concerns, but we're also tied to this complicated funding formula, and it'd be hard to increase our reach without really knowing what the numbers are. So as they pointed out, we're going to put this in there. Hopefully it'll keep the governor's office happy that we're being more aggressive in our stated goals, but we don't know what the brass ring is at the end of that ask. So this is kind of complicated. I think if anything else, whatever we do with this, we have to double down on this coming up pit to make sure we don't short ourselves on future applications. But just to clarify, I think I already asked you this, Todd, and Scott, I don't think I had a chance to talk to you, but on paper at least, this does satisfy in some respects the governor's stated concerns. So just like HAP 3 went through with some changes, or they released it on some understanding that we've met these this new paradigm that the governor's office has stated. Does this document in front of us now, is it beefed up sufficiently that it's going to meet muster?
I believe so. Even our application that we turned in last summer, we went through a similar process as we're doing right now. That was approved, and once the governor came out with his concerns, the follow up to that 8CD did with our application is, they didn't disagree with our application. They just asked some clarifying questions about how we're going to do it, but they didn't disagree with what we were trying to do.
All right. And you had one comment?
Yeah, I guess I have one question. What's the penalty for not reaching our goal?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess we haven't considered not a failure. I think, and I haven't, I guess, really considered that, just because I did know when we did have the shelter over at Juvenile Hall, that did make a difference. I mean, our pit count numbers even reflected that to some regard, especially with those that were homeless but sheltered. It made a significant difference. And so I'd at least like to get back to that point. It's a very needed service We hear people all the time who ask where they can go because there's nothing available right now in our county. So it's just vital that we get something reestablished as quickly as possible.
And I would say that there is something going on in our county. We do have some facilities.
Oh, no, I'm not.
We
I
just
mean it
don't
like
have
that.
a
I mean,
permanent.
there's just nothing open right now.
We don't have well, there is something open. We just don't have a permanent
Oh, there's not
shelter.
beds open. That's what I
Because
mean.
we have Hope
I mean,
Center that
is
still
here,
exists.
but they're filled, you know?
We have Hope
Scott,
Center
one
that
second.
still exists and is providing services as we speak. That's being converted over to Adventist Health to continue those services. I believe that Restoration House, Project Restoration House over in Lower Lake still exists. There's still the Nest that still exists. So there's definitely little pockets. It's not as large, but in my opinion, if we do end up reopening Juvenile Hall, the 41 can be taken care of. I think that we can easily meet our goal with just one facility, and I know that it's possible for us to make that happen. We just need the long-term money to be able to make that happen. That's been one of our issues, is we can't ask a nonprofit to hire for 3 months worth of work only to say, sorry, we don't have any more money. But I'm concerned about the 413 and reducing that to 41, where there's still 372 people out in the elements. And I'm concerned about the other one, which is estimate of number of people becoming newly homeless is 259, and we're looking to plan to reduce that by 10%. Like, we are losing the battle if we aim low. I don't want a floor, I want a high bar, and if there's no penalty, then why not set a high bar so that we can try to rise to the expectation?
So what would you suggest, Supervisor?
And this is why I think that, again, with the issue of the application not being clear until yesterday after probably 3 p.m., I don't know what exact time it got updated, but the public wasn't able to read it legibly. The Board of Supervisors wasn't able to read it legibly, again, unless private emails were submitted to the Board of Supervisors. But I think we need to think, what is the challenge that we want to take on? Because this is an issue that hurts more than just the people that are outside. This hurts our communities. This hurts our businesses. And we have a number that is somewhat of a manageable number. We're not LA with 40,000 people exhibiting signs of homelessness. We have a limited number, and I think we should aim a little higher. That, again, it's up to the board, but those are my comments today.
So Supervisor Sabatier, I'm hearing two different things. Would you like us to bring this back to the board next week? But we can't, I mean, at this point, we can't really change any of this. But am I hearing that you would like that the public has a little bit more time to digest this? Is that what I'm understanding?
I thought we had the ability to change this. I didn't know this was a formality to approve. Nothing came back, I believe, to the COC or came back to the board when the governor said, review this, this is unacceptable. And I know that we were above the 2% aggregate that the rest of the counties did, but that doesn't mean we can't rise to the occasion as well. And I don't want to be, I would personally rather take up a challenge than let the challenge slide when there is some impacts to human beings out there, including our communities and our businesses. And I don't know of any penalties, unless you can tell me that there are some.
No, these are our goals, and so we can set them, you know, for what we want.
So, and yes, I would like maybe a week to come back on the 20th, and then after being able to read it, since it wasn't available until yesterday afternoon, and thinking of what challenge do we want to take on? Do we want to take on the 10%, or do we want to do more? But I am challenging this board, and I am challenging the county to take the challenge, because we do need to do better. And I know we all want to do better, but let's set the bar higher, not where it is.
Just say challenge one more time.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you say that, Supervisor Sabatier, because we're working on the 100-day challenge, which supports this work around how many folks that are unhoused can we house. So I'd be more than happy to bring this back next week. And Scott, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking for you, but we have the time we can spare a week.
You're his boss, so Supervisor Simon?
Yeah,
and
right,
then
I'm good.
Supervisor-
I got another tie.
You know, obviously, I always want to do better, but just as I said, a little complicated, you know, is moving this forward. So, you know, for me, myself, I'm prepared to move forward with the proposal that was brought by you, Todd, and Scott, you know, is moving forward. You know, I think the challenge really comes to, are we even going to implement that 10%? You can say, you know, we want to do 50%, yeah, but let's be realistic here. I mean, you know, there's so many challenges that come along with addressing this issue. We're not going to figure it out in a week or 2 weeks. It's really that simple. Having funding is a big part of how we move forward in trying to address this issue. I mean, even when we had the shelter for a temporary position where it was in the old juvenile hall, you know, ultimately to turn that into a permanent, there's going to be a whole discussion by the community surrounding that. You know, so it's not as simple as, well, we had a shelter and it's going to be there. I can remember a gentleman came right here and said, hey, when's our turn to public comment about where you're putting that shelter at? Are you putting that in my community? So I think there's a lot of challenges for me. Looking at opportunities, bringing funding in. We have the Collier project that we're working on. We have some of the other things, you know, that I say we've got the ball rolling on. Hearing those challenges, yeah, 413 people, but there's always going to be a section of that 413 that don't want the help. So it's going to be just like our defaulted tax sale property thing that we're constantly talking about. It's always going to be there, and it's a challenge. I don't have the answer for it, but coming from Indian country and seeing the numbers on the Alaska and the natives here in the county that are homeless, we're always constantly working on that. Not only were we landless, but we're also homeless. To look at that in our own way, and I don't have the answer. I've tried to think outside of the box. I'm like, why can't we make the tax default properties into that homeless answer? You know, why don't we fix those up and put folks in those communities? I mean, it seems like it's there, but until that decision is made by this country that you need to have the houses to give the people, it's going to be a challenge. So it's hard. I hear your point. I accept the challenge, but it's where do we put them? Because we know we're going to get feedback on that, even when it's happening. But we do see it's working. You talked about the Lower Lake home. You know, I saw an individual there at the Lower Lake Parade that has been having some real challenges, because we are making steps forward. Real challenges, but he's staying at that home right now. And he was clean and sober. Hadn't seen him in that way in probably 15 years. Very frequent to our local jail, very frequent to disrupting business, but we are taking steps and strides forward. And for me, I'm like, you know, let's move forward with it and figure it out once we get the dollars. So those are my thoughts. It's challenging, so. But I'll go with wherever the majority of the board rules. But those are my thoughts. I'm ready to move forward with it.
No, and Supervisor Simon, I really appreciate what you said, and I also want to go back to what Supervisor Sabatier said about, yeah, we should do more. But as Scott mentioned, I mean, we can certainly overachieve. This is just sort of the bare minimum, and heck yeah, we're going to work as hard as we can to make these numbers look better than what we're stating. So I don't want the board to think that this is all we're trying to do, that we're gonna work as hard as we can to go above and beyond this.
Supervisor Green and then Supervisor Pyska.
Oh, I have my pen up. If it's no harm, no foul, I'm interested in exploring a slightly more aggressive metric, knowing that it probably won't change our funding formula, and knowing that the difficulty of implementing our higher goals is going to be exactly the same as it is for these lesser goals. But there were some metrics in here that at first glance did seem probably meets the state funding formula, probably the verbiage meets whatever they want in HAPland, but yeah, it looked like we were treading water at best. It didn't look like the type of improvement that we really should be setting for ourselves as a goal, even if we fall short. So if the board is the ultimate policymaker on this particular issue, and we want to inform COC and our partner agencies what we're really trying to accomplish here, I'm certainly okay with gaming the numbers, because this is not a game. You know, we need to make substantial progress on this. So if there's time within the next week and we can still timely submit this application and also represent an increased lift, or at least a goal of this body, I'm okay with taking that week, absolutely.
Vice Chair Pycia?
Well, I just want to remind the board, we contributed is it 800,000, 600,000 to NCO's housing project, where they're taking the red tagged homes, and yeah, so we did that in the spring, I think. So that program is underway, and they're training people to do the renovations and getting what?
Is it underway?
I
don't remember ever getting a contract for that yet.
The program was,
Yeah, they had the program.
they had the program running, and then we gave them the infusion to keep it running. So we have not gotten an update. But that was a significant amount of housing that's being renovated and red tagged to get those people that are trained to do the work and into those homes.
Did you have anything else?
No, I mean, I could go either way on this. I understand both points. So I don't really, we could wait a week, or we could submit it now, which I'm ready to do also. So I'll just wait and see what you all want to do.
I think a week's good, and I agree with both Supervisor Simon and Supervisor Sabatier, but I do think a little more time. I did, have trouble reading it myself, but, I got it yesterday and was able to look it over. But at the same time, some of the public, I don't want to chance that, and however, I do agree with you, Moak, about some of the folks not ever necessarily being people that want to be helped, and then having specific demographics where you can't really reach, and it's a challenge. And so moving forward sometimes is just, is the ideal thing to do. But for me, I think we'll be okay with a week, and just like to see. I was in that meeting as well with the governor, and I heard it loud and clear. So I agree with the week, if that's the direction we all want to take.
As long as you all can guarantee we can get this back on an agenda for next week.
Ms. Grant.
Yes, just in regard to the recommended action, the recommended action is to approve either the current or revised application for the HHAP-4 funding, and further authorize Behavioral Health Services Director to execute the contract and any other documents necessary to secure and utilize this funding. As your board knows, a delegation of authority from you can't be discretionary. It has to be ministerial. So if you're going to continue for a week, or if you're not, it would be a good idea from a legal perspective to have some more specificity as to execute what contract and what any other documents necessary to secure and utilize this funding is also rather broad. Perhaps behavioral health could give a few parameters to that so that your board's delegation is clear and within the bounds of the law.
And those documents or document would be around the point in time count, because that's what's driving the funding behind this.
Well, I think she's referring to the delegation to you, Todd. And we did do that at the beginning of the HHAPs. And so it sounds like.
One, that's right, yes.
Yeah. And HCD has continued to recognize that.
So then I'd suggest they just insert the same language so it's consistent throughout and not just vague in one recommended action of your board.
I think that, and there's no one to blame for this, but I think by changing the language, as Ms. Grant was suggesting, to review, it ensures that this topic is brought to the board so that we can have the discussions on what's going on, what are we doing, because we have contracts that we create with other agencies. Sometimes they're on the consent agenda, sometimes they're not, but that doesn't always mean that we discuss how are things going with the HHAP, and are we seeing us moving towards our goal? And I think it provides the opportunity for a check-in, because I think it's easy for a year to go by. And I know that we discussed homelessness, I don't know, about a month or two ago, and we said that we need to look for funding. Funding is available through this, and there's other funding opportunities, but I think that we need to discuss it a little bit more often, because it's something that's very apparent for specific communities that are dealing with it, and especially the people that are involved in being homeless as well, that we need to pay attention to the status of where we're at and the work that we're doing.
Supervisor Green?
If it's a simple across-the-board metric that would give the specificity, if we went from 10% to 15%, is that acceptable across the categories? Not asking whether it's achievable. If we're going to raise the bar, is the percentage of people served the bar that we can raise?
I would say that we could definitely do that. I mean, it is tough, as you know, and I don't mean to make excuses, but I think everyone on the board and everyone in the community is aware that housing is a shortage problem. And so even, I mean, the idea is if you do interim housing is you graduate people from interim housing into permanent housing. And permanent housing is where we're struggling with. Affordable permanent housing is where we're struggling with. Our providers have done a really good job of getting people through that process, but it's still a very difficult process.
And I totally appreciate that. Again, I don't want to just pull numbers out of our hat that are not achievable in any sense. But on the other hand, we're being asked to set numbers. And I'd like to see 10% go up to some figure, call it 12, call it 15, just so we have in our own minds kind of what we're trying to accomplish, knowing all the difficulties that you've said and that we're going to hear time and again from COC and others. But it did strike me on this ask across these categories that maybe we were limiting ourselves above and beyond the actual constraints of the infrastructure. So giving ourselves permission to exceed, yeah, we could exceed that if we left everything at 10%. But to the question of should we have higher goals, did the governor want us to set higher goals? I think the percentage metric is the easiest way to do that. And just finding the number that everyone's comfortable with might be the quick and dirty way to do it.
No? Anything else, Supervisor Simon, or before I open it up to the public? So I'll open it up to the public. I know no one's in the chambers. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak on behalf of this item? All right, not seeing or hearing any of anyone raising their hands or anything of that nature, so I'll bring it back to the board for
I think I heard a majority of bringing it back next week, right? That's what I heard.
Ms. Grant.
Anita wanted specificity.
Yeah.
We have to give some direction.
Yes, the request was when it says execute the contract and any other documents necessary to secure and utilize this funding. For a legal delegation of your authority, it's just simply too broad and ill-defined. And if it relates back to earlier actions of your board, then the language just needs to reflect that so that it's consistent throughout.
So we could do that in the form of a resolution.
That was my question. Is that?
You can do it in the form of a resolution, but you can also just simply make this language for recommended action more specific and relate it to something that the public can tag on or that the board has seen or accepts as sufficient parameters for your delegation.
Okay.
So basically our first approval, because this is the fourth round of the HAP funding, correct? That
Yes.
Yes. This is round 4.
Susan?
Yes, I just want to make the comment that I'll be working very closely with Todd and Scott tomorrow in turning this around in a timely fashion with the guidance provided by Anita.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome, sir.
So with that, we can, there's a consensus to bring back next week and go from there. No motions needed or anything. All right. Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Scott. We'll go ahead and see you next week on this item. Appreciate your accommodation on that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your input. I appreciate it.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the board very much. It's nice to hear a board that is very enthusiastic about this subject. Changes like this inevitably always have to come from the top down, and it's great to hear your enthusiasm and your concern about these issues.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will close this item, which is 7.3. Go to 7.1, conduct calendars. Before we go back into, yeah, we
Forgot all about that. It's been a long day.
yeah.
Okay, I'll start. Finished the board meeting today. We still got some time with closed session here. Tomorrow we have be with Berlin with the LTA and the APC board meeting in the morning. Lower Lake Action Committee group, can't wait for that to come back. That will come back in January, which I'm excited about, and I'll be I think I'm scheduled to be the first speaker. So excellent, excited about that, like I said. Looks like I have on Thursday, and I got to get it figured out. The EMCC, I got to check and see. I got that one on my calendar here for 10 a.m. or 10:30 on Thursday, and then Friday I have Workforce Alliance in North Bay from 9 a.m. till about noon. So I'll be attending that meeting via Zoom. And Saturday. Don't have anything on the schedule yet, but I think I have a call this afternoon with FFA, potentially for Reef Across America, kind of a late call, but I think I got that call today, so I'm going to check and see about that. And then back here on Monday, we have the Risk Reduction Authority meeting, last one of the 19th, and just back here on the 20th for the final meeting.
Michael? Supervisor Green, sorry.
I know, I can't do that. Yeah, hope to get through this meeting today. It's a marathon. Tomorrow, maybe you guys can tell me. I see APC and LTA on here, but I forget if I'm a member or an alternate. I think I'm an alternate. Bruno, you're primary? All right, so I'm going to
Myself and Supervisor Simon.
All right, so I'm gonna pop in for a little bit if possible. I am continuing my meetings with department heads, hoping to meet with their air quality management, Mr. Gerhart, tomorrow. Looks like there may be a children's council meeting at 1. Like I'll be meeting with the district attorney in the afternoon. Speaking of COC, I see that on Thursday. Again, I need to double check if I'm a member or an alternate or something like that, but I'm definitely going to pop in and say howdy one way or the other. Hope to squeeze in some time. The state's Department of Cannabis Control's Cannabis Advisory Committee is meeting Thursday. Hope to zoom in on that and catch up on some stuff there. A couple debrief sessions. So again, last week there was the emergency summit on the Clear Lake Hitch. I hope to speak with staff on some of the issues raised there, and I hope to do some additional outreach or actually get some feedback from some people on Friday. Let me see. And other than that, it looks like my calendar after that is pretty light leading into Christmas. So definitely busier than it's been in the last couple of weeks. So I think people are getting the memo that they can put stuff on my calendar because they're certainly doing it. Thank you.
I have some I can let you borrow. All right, Supervisor Sabatier?
Yes, looking forward to the rest of this meeting. Then tomorrow, LTA APC here in Lakeport City Hall. I'm going to try to make it in person rather than via Zoom. And then every year, I kind of took this over from Supervisor Brown when he was in office. I work with the Environmental Alternatives, I believe is the name of the agency, who helps out some of our foster youth. I receive a Christmas list and spread that out to our staff members. This time the list was actually pretty small, so I spread it out to just individual departments. And I just want to thank those departments who provided the gifts. I will be delivering those gifts tomorrow, and we'll be making some children very happy. Then on Thursday, Judge's Breakfast. I have like way too much going on. Supervisor Simon, did you say that you would be there for the IFT and EMCC?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Then I will be joining Hope Rising to go to that meeting, and then I will be meeting with code enforcement later on that day to do a demonstration of the database that I finally updated with the connection to our network with the latest parcel information. There's a Clear Lake City Council meeting later on that night as well, and then I think everything is fairly light until Monday, meeting with CAO, and then back to the board on Tuesday. I do want to say that I am working on a MOU to consider for the skate park over the city of Clear Lake. We did choose somebody, and so need to bring that here. And then also was not able to meet with PEG as there was a unfortunate death in one of our members' families, and so we were not able to have a quorum. I'm looking to have a special meeting this upcoming Monday so that we can continue pursuing to get approval for the purchase of the equipment that we talked about for videography, and that is my report.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, I have a few things to report out on. Last week, I went to the pruning workshop that the Wine Grape Commission brought to our county. It's about a little over a $300,000 grant to bring in this pruning school, which there's a session here in the winter, several sessions. There's cohorts with 2-day classes, so it was all last week, this week, and then Spanish-speaking sessions in November or January, and then again in May, and then over the course of the next couple of years. So it's a whole new pruning philosophy that builds sustainability in the vines for longer longevity and climate change. And so that was really exciting to go out into the vineyards and get to watch that. I went to a house fire on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. And it's really important this time of year. We've got fires going, we've got wood stoves, and when you take the ashes out, make sure it's in a metal bucket with a locking lid, not on your porch, away from your house, non-combustible area. These are the accidents that happened. They're really dangerous, but the fire crews all showed up in a really big way. No injuries. There were 2 dogs in the house. One of the dogs got out first with the first responders when they came, the firefighters. The second dog was found a little bit later, but was resuscitated, or not resuscitated, it was given oxygen. The South Lake Fire Sirens raised money and donated special oxygen masks for dogs and cats. And so the firefighters took great care of that little dog, went in the ambulance, got a lot of care, went to the hospitals, expect to make full recovery. But these are kind of the dangers of living in the country where you have a wood stove, and in the cold weather, you've got to take those extra precautions and not, it's really common for people to put their wood ashes in a cardboard box or a paper bag and put it on the porch. I know, it happens. Not even tinfoil. You can get a bucket with a locking lid at any hardware store around here for not very much. So that's the appropriate way to deal with the ashes. We don't want any more house fires. And we certainly don't want any more little doggies getting injured. So then we got a lot of snow, as everybody knows. Came a little later than expected. It was supposed to come Sunday afternoon. It came Sunday evening after it had gotten dark, and our road crews were out there working all through the night, plowing, sanding. Really grateful for all those crews, all the work that they do. Tree crews were out. The trees are falling like crazy. Members of the public are out there with their chainsaws clearing roads. PG&E responders are out there restoring power. You know, it turns into a big mess when we get a lot of snow like that, and especially when we've got a lot of dead trees hanging around. So, you know, I just can't thank enough the people that were out there Sunday night, Monday morning, in the cold, away from their families, doing that work to keep everybody safe. And that work is going to continue because there's still a lot of issues going on. And like I mentioned earlier, Measure L for South Lake provides some extra plowing for roads that are not maintained by the county. So those plows are going to be out there getting to those people that can't get out of their houses still or out of their driveways. But the ice is going to be bad this week, so continue to drive with caution and really just take care of, check on people if you know they're elderly or vulnerable and it's cold, and make sure they've got enough, they've got heat and enough firewood and food if they can't get out. That is all my updates. So tomorrow, agenda review, and then we're having the meeting about the CWPP, Anita, and I'd sent that information to you last week. We're going to be picking up that conversation from 2 weeks ago, and about the Fire Safe Council and the CWPP, and that is with staff, and I think that's with staff, right? Just staff? My glasses are fogging up again. There's a Seroptimus event tomorrow evening at the Ripe Choice, which I'm probably not going to go to because I am not feeling great. Thursday morning, Best Fits Grant meeting and Quality Improvement Committee and Lake County Fuels Reduction Conversation. And we have an extra AAA meeting.
Yeah.
We've got that we scheduled 2 months ago? Is that October, November?
Yeah.
There's a CAC meeting in the evening, but it's also the winter performance at Cobb School, so I have to make my decision on that. And then Friday, Workforce Alliance. I'm going to be Zooming here from the courthouse.
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I believe when I started here in 2009, we had Bruce Wilson come in and provide kind of an update on what was going on, and it's been a while since we've seen him. Wondering if that's something that might come up.
He came last year.
I think he does the beginning of every year. We'll bring that up
Yeah.
at this last meeting of the year.
Okay, it's
So
possible I
think
missed
it's
it
the
then.
early on in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
You said 2009, though?
I remember when we started, he was there.
No, I'm teasing because you.
2009.
2000, yeah.
19.
Ignore me.
The South Lake Fire's Candy Cane Run is rescheduled for Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this weekend. It was moved from last weekend with the inclement weather. So Sunday, it will be in Cobb, and that is always so much fun. We love that. I love seeing Santa on the fire truck. And then Monday, I have my meeting with CIO Parker, Risk Reduction Authority, and then last meeting on the 20th.
All right. So I'll give a couple reports. The South Deal meeting was Thursday. Couple key factors. They talked about the Canocti project where the 4 lanes are. Yeah,
They named it now, the Knockback Project.
Yeah, they're looking at opening that up and doing like a ribbon cutting. Of course, they're working with Laura Samuel with the Chamber of Commerce to schedule that. However, they're looking at March timeframe to do that ribbon cutting deal. So that's when they'll open that 4-lane highway, so you guys can just speed through. I'm just kidding, but you guys can actually just not have to worry about, being, because usually you're going down one or even sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyhow, just thought you would like to hear that. I know that the other thing that we brought up during that meeting was, pull it up real quick. Where did it go? Oh, okay, here it is. It's the Clean California Community Day. They're looking at spring into action, so March 25th, they're looking countywide, statewide in every county to conduct a cleanup. They're going to provide trash bags, vouchers for dump fees, litter picker-upper, publicity, and then work with some community agencies to organize their memberships to clean up around around Lake County and around some of the areas. So there's that for South Deal. Let me see, weekly count. Okay, Hitch Emergency Summit I went to with Supervisor Green. That was a really informative emergency summit, if you will. I know that there was a lot of discussion about, the tribes and dealing with the situation and having, I guess, the situation with the hitch being considered more like a negative aspect, and they would like to see a lot more I guess, education, as the natives that inhabited this land really thrived off of that fish. And so when projects happen and they're slowed up because of the permits and whatnot, it gets a little frustrating for some of the local tribes to be a part of that and hear that. I don't know why that's doing that, but sorry.
That's your timer.
Yeah, it's my timer. So yes, and we had some good discussion afterwards about some potential moves to move forward, and Supervisor Green proposed some of that, but of course, we're going to meet with staff to make sure on that, but he was a champion in that meeting to get up and speak that with the community, and I think it was well taken. And of course, our staff did really good there as well to address a lot of the concerns. So just wanted to highlight that. RCRC last week, I lost. For the second vice chair. It was a 13-13-9 vote the first time because there's 3 people running. You cannot get elected without a majority, so they ran it again, and it went down to 13-13-8. So I think someone on Zoom probably left. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to, just belabor this and be that one guy. So I dropped out, and I think Jerry Byrne won from Modoc County. So, but both of the candidates were really good candidates. Miles Minatre, I think we've all met him before. He's down in Mariposa County, and so yeah, it went the way it was, and that's how it goes sometimes. I think it's probably one of the first elections I've ever lost in my life. So interesting fact. But some of the policies in the meeting the meeting still went like all day. I didn't get back till 5:30. Usually those meetings end like at 2. So not to mention traffic, but we had a couple of guest speakers that were there. Let's see, I know that one of them was Karen Ross from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and she fielded a lot of questions from the local, well, not local, but the rural counties that are dealing with ag. So there's a lot of pretty much just statements about how the voices aren't heard from the agricultural communities, farms and things of that nature. They'd like to see more policies heard in that manner, because at times it's just like what we were listening to in Ag Venture, same thing. So they just pretty much had a round robin and talked about that. Imperial County brought their staff to talk about creating a renewable future. Basically, they're looking to build batteries. And so that was interesting to hear, but we heard it out, and then it got into a long discussion about, EV, with the energy efficient cars, things like that. So, yeah, that's how that went. Last but not least, the illicit cannabis discussion, the ad hoc committee, finally, we approved the policies for that, and basically came up with, the ad hoc committee that I was on came up with some potential legislative measures, and I can forward the details to you all. But all in all, revisions to the statutory penalties for unlicensed cannabis activities, improvements to local administrative penalty processes for cannabis violations, forfeiture of personal property used for unlicensed cannabis activities, strengthen enforcement procedures and penalty provisions for illegal water diversions made in connection with unpermitted cannabis cultivation, establish a CEQA exemption for retail distribution and laboratory licenses, and a placeholder for statutory revisions that may be necessary to address wheeler versus Appellate Division, a pending Supreme Court case challenging local jurisdiction's authority to impose strict liability criminal penalties for unpermitted cannabis activity. And then they provided a budget. I'll submit that to you also. You have that. Don't want to get too far into it because I know it's getting late. But so that was a RCRC meeting. So tomorrow, agenda review. We'll do that in the morning, of course. Last week I was in traffic, so I wasn't able to attend. Looks like you guys did a great job otherwise. But I'll be coming to Veterans Court tomorrow here in the courthouse on the 4th floor. Thursday, a AAA governing board meeting, like we discussed. There's an admin meeting I have to be at as well here. And then LAF in the evening. Friday I have pretty much open. Monday I meet with CAO Parker. And I back here for Tuesday. And that's that. So our calendar's done, right? All right, so with that, we'll go into closed session. My iPad went out, so I can't read it.
8.1, evaluation.
Oh, that's right. Thank goodness. That's the simple one. 8.1, employee evaluation, Director of Public Health. With that, we'll go into closed session, and thank you for tuning in.